BIA Stronghold. There is no video and only a few screenshots from the construction of the fortress. The inside of the castle was supposed to remain a secret. The project started sometime around April 2017 during closed beta test run number 3, when the Brothers in Arms Guild, together with the Blood Pact Alliance, were looking for a spot to settle on the MMO. The stronghold was supposed to be a treasury and our last stand in case things would go bad, but one of the key demands also was that it would look good, monumental. Building on a rock is very different from building anywhere else in this game. On a rock you cannot simply add a line of tiles when you need more space. Doing that, you would often pour the dirt tens of meters below, and you would eventually end up ruining the whole mountain. It requires careful planning, and often you get to the point where you realize that the problem you face has no solution that would bring a good enough result. So you need to start again with a new point of view on how the terrain you are given could be used the best. And so drawing the layout of the stronghold was a very difficult job, which took many hours, hundreds of hours in fact. I tried multiple approaches. At first I was simply making screenshots of the terrain and drawing in them. The result wasn't very good, as this didn't allow me to see the heights of the tiles. So I returned to what I always did when drawing a layout, and what most people do, using a Google table as a grid to draw into while being in the game world with my character. This had a significant drawback, as the test runs usually lasted for 2 weeks, and then the servers went offline for a month. At that time, however, the creation of custom maps for Life is Feudal Your Own was spreading, and I was trying to figure out how to transfer the MMO terrain into a YO server, which would give me more time and room for the project. After multiple failed attempts to extract the terrain data from Life is Feudal MMO, I decided to scan the height of each tile in the area, making a height map, which I then used to create a custom map for a private YO server. It was the tedious work, but the result was pretty much like the original MMO terrain. On this server, I created the model of how the final stronghold should look like. In this dry run, I realized some critical aspects of building on a rock, such as never to start hammering buildings unless the whole terrain is terraformed, or to think twice before doing any action. Once I took away so much rock that I had to turn off the server and manually reverse the changes in the database, otherwise I would need to wipe the server and start all over. One of the key game mechanics used in this layout was that paved tiles could be 4 meters above the neighboring tiles, unlike the common 2 meters. It was also possible to add paving on top of another paving, so it was fairly easy to create something like an artificial rock. Well, this was disabled the day open beta started, so this layout became useless. Another critical mechanics, which was fortunately still in place, was that if you dig a rock and let the mine shaft collapse, the dirt stays there even if it is very high above the neighboring tiles. And this thing is what makes building on a rock so unique, and also what bears the greatest risk, because if you accidentally remove the collapsed dirt you wanted to build on, you will never put it back there again. After about a month of open beta, when we had our economical base finished, I returned to the project and started working on a new layout. There was no time for experimenting with YO servers, so I simply looked at the height map I had previously made and picked the height at which the top level with the keep would be. At that point I was checking the height map more often than the actual terrain in-game, simply because it was faster and easier for orientation. The first height level I chose didn't allow for a good fort to be built, so I went 1 meter lower, and then again, until I got to a point where the top level of the stronghold was good enough with room for all the necessary buildings and walls. I was a little worried that this method would get the top level too low, but in this case it was still 14 meters above the second level. After the layout was finished, a lot of adjustments were made during the actual work, since some errors in the layout showed up, as well as opportunity for some improvements that I had previously overlooked. It was therefore important to always keep track of what was going on with the terraforming and not to strictly follow the plan without looking from other points of view. The estimated amount of work needed to build this thing was at first 35,000 shaped granite for the walls and keep, and about 1.5 million units of rock to be dug out, shaped into stone ammo and dumped. Nobody counted how much rock was actually dug out, but it was way over 3 million. Now for the defensive elements of the stronghold. It was originally designed to withstand an instanced siege, which the developers kept talking about but never actually delivered. In this siege, the defending side would get tickets based on the smaller of the two numbers, the number of spawn points and the rally points. That is the reason for 3 houses in the town claim with total amount of 95 spawn points and a keep with 60 rally points. There was also enough empty room in the upper level for 6 or 7 additional tents, giving us total 95 tickets, which seemed more than enough, considering that the enemy would need to build a siege camp with 19 tents to match that number, and even more tents as they would take heavy losses while breaching the walls. Building such a siege camp would be nearly impossible in the rocky terrain around the stronghold. However, after I had given up on the game, my friends changed the layout a little to fit the sieges during the Judgment Hour. One such addition was exchanging one of the houses for a large warehouse, as containers inside building could not be opened by the enemy. Another addition was the trade post. Its purpose was that our friends from another world would supply us with warfare kits and trebuchet ammo. A defensive trebuchet was added near the middle of the fort after a patch was released which made countering trebuchets very effective. As you may have noticed on the model of the first layout, there was no outer gate, no entrance to the stronghold. The idea was to make a tunnel under the southern wall and place a wooden gate on each end of the tunnel. I was planning that for the enemy, getting inside the tunnel would be fairly easy, but once the enemy reached the inner gate, they would be shot at from every direction with nowhere to hide, and the only way to break the inner gate would be sapper charges or torches. A trebuchet would be of no use there. In the second layout, there was an actual gate in the wall, as well as the tunnel, which led to the third level of the fort, located to the south in the realm claim. This could also serve as a sally port. Eventually this plan was abandoned because the number of active players was dropping and someone would have had to maintain the tunnel, but also because buildings in the realm claim would be quite vulnerable, and therefore the whole southern part of the stronghold was left unfinished. As for the walls in the lower level of the stronghold, there were only 2 spots where you could get on them: the ramp leading to the upper level and the small passage in the upper level wall. All the towers in the lower level were angular towers, without any entrance at their bottom, and the gatehouse entrances were blocked by more walls. Perhaps it was possible to get on top of the walls from the house, but I never tested that. Therefore, if the enemy breached into the lower level, they would find themselves in death trap. To get on top of the walls, they would need to get nearly to the top of the ramp while taking arrows from everywhere. One of the worst drawbacks was that the monument was not inside the keep. Therefore, if the enemy had breached the lower level and placed a few good trebuchets, it wouldn't be too hard to destroy the wall in the way and the monument behind it. This is about all that was worth mentioning about the project. In the end, I would like to express my many thanks to all those who helped in the construction, and especially those who continued after I had lost my faith in the game and its developers and quit.